Hi Year 11s. Today we're looking at week 3 of our ecosystems topic. This correlates with topic 4.4 in your workbooks, which we've been working on in class. It's going to be split into 2 very small videos. We're going to start with our first video here is reproductive isolation. We have briefly mentioned this in other topics, but we're going to look at this in a bit more detail now. So the first thing we're looking at is the types of reproductive isolation. There's 2 different types of reproductive isolation. There's pre-zygotic and post-zygotic. Pre-zygotic is when zygotes can't physically form. So you might have 2 different species breeding together or not being able to breed, but in the case, a zygote never forms, therefore there can't be any offspring. Or you can have post-zygotic, where a zygote is physically formed, but the resulting offspring either doesn't survive, or it can't live, or it can't physically reproduce itself. It's sterile. We'll start with first pre-zygotic isolation. And there's a number of different mechanisms that lead to pre-zygotic isolation, which is what we're going to talk about here. First is ecological isolation. That's when 2 members of a species will live in different habitats and they never physically meet. And because they don't physically meet, they're not able to breed. Next is temporal isolation, and that's kind of what our image here is referring to. So in this one here, you can see one flower is ready to accept pollen, but the other plant is not up to releasing pollen right now. It's pollinating in a different season. So temporal isolation is while organisms will live in the same general area as each other, or 2 species live in the same area as each other, they're not sexually mature or sexually active at the same time, hence they never physically breed. Mechanical isolation is kind of exactly what it sounds like. Species have different shaped genitalia. Those genitalia don't actually fit together, and hence they can't reproduce. Behavioural isolation could be talking about courtships. So, for example, for a good example we probably used in class when we talked about pigeons. Pigeons have a mating ritual, a special dance. That mating ritual is only going to work on other pigeons. A seagull is not going to be interested in that dance. A seagull has its own mating ritual, so that mating ritual, that behaviour, won't entice another member of another species, and hence they will never breed. And lastly, gametic isolation. So one species gametes are incompatible with another species gametes. Lastly is for this video. Remember, there's 2 videos this week. Lastly is post-zygotic mechanisms. That's when we're talking about, so a zygote's formed, but it can't actually, it's sterile or it doesn't live on to breed. So a good example of that is a mule, as we've got in the image here. So hybrid unviability, that's when the zygote's formed, but it most likely will pass away before it ever reaches reproductive age, and hence it never actually reproduces on its own. When hybrid sterility is what the mule has, a zygote is formed, it's actually born, and it lives to sexual maturity, but it's sterile, so it can't produce its own offspring. That's it for this video, so see you in the next video.